Okay, good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining Jane for another virtual Lunch and Learn. Today, we've got a great presentation today on selecting the correct drip tape for your crop. You know, this is pretty interesting and pretty important, right? I think many times growers might defer the decision to somebody else that they think has more expertise or knowledge in the area, but I certainly find that the more I know about a product and the more understanding I have of that product, the better I am at using it. And ultimately, if I'm a grower, if I know how to better use it, I expect and will get, greater yields. So this becomes a really important topic, right? Selecting that correct drip tape. And we're really fortunate to have Kevin Stewart, a certified irrigation agricultural specialist, presenting to us today. Kevin's also the Ag Sales Director for Jain USA, and somebody I consider a real expert in the area of agricultural micro irrigation. And Kevin is just a pleasure to work with. For those of you who know Kevin and have had the chance to work with him in the field, you know how easy it is to work with and how valuable his information is. And the other thing I just want to mention today is, Kevin told the story. I hope you don't mind me telling it, but he said the only you need to have is agriculture. But Kevin is also a tremendous photographer. If you look at our website, you can look at my 7 favorite photos of the week. Oftentimes, those 7 photos are photos that Kevin's taken of ag, as well as ag irrigation, that really help you understand what these products do and how they are used in the field. I think we're probably looking at one of Kevin's photos right here. So anyway, with that, I want to turn it over to Kevin and say, Kevin, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And one other thing for those of you that are watching, you can use the Q&A box or the chat box to ask questions during the presentation, and I'll be sure to get those questions to Kevin. So Kevin, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, we're looking at a crop of celery in the Salinas Valley, just outside, just really in Spreckles, California. But, I've had the opportunity to be in this business for about 20 years, and I've had the opportunity to really travel around the country, a little bit around the globe, but most of my focus has been here in North America, and being able to work with some fantastic irrigation dealers and with their customers, the end user, and to share kind of our experiences that we've learned as far as using drip irrigation, and also learn from the grower, what's worked and what hasn't. So we'll take the next 30, 40 minutes to kind of go over, and we really want to dive into what's really going to be the best option for your crop. There's a lot of different tape options out there, and we want to try and help guide you guys in the right direction. Just in case anyone's not really familiar about what drip irrigation is, in the most simplest of terms, it's really applying small amounts of water, water and fertilizer to the crop, really 1 drop at a time. We try and get the placement of whatever the source is as close to the crop or the root zone. And we're really, this is a very low volume, low pressure type system. And so we're operating at 10 PSI within the drip tape itself. And by the time water has made its way through the tape, it's coming out, at a droplet at a time. So again, low rates, a high frequency. Traditional systems, irrigation systems may run once a week. We're running every day in extreme cases, but generally every 2 to 3 days is when a drip irrigation system is applying water to a field. So then you ask, well, what is drip tape? And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think drip tape kind of got its name just because when you roll this polyethylene material, it rolls flat, almost like just a roll of tape would, and so it's kind of gotten its name as is tape. Obviously, they'll understand the concept of that. But drip tape is made from polyethylene. It ranges in mil thickness from 4 thousandths of an inch thick up to 20 thousandths of an inch thick. Or often we refer to it as mil. So between 4 and 20 mil is kind of the range that Jain manufactures. It really kind of is focused on high value crops, vegetables, fruits, but it's not limited to just that. We do a lot of business with corn, cotton, soybeans, some of the main staple crops that we have, where growers are trying to look for ways to conserve water. And so this has been a great option. And it really has a range of spacing anywhere from 2 inches all the way up to 24 inches and everything in between.
So Kevin, when I'm ordering, or when I'm looking at what drip tape to buy, I just order it in the 2 inch, 4 inch, whatever spacing I want. How does that work?
Yeah. So we'll it comes in a bunch of different options. We'll kind of go through, and in this we hope to maybe help people understand what's going to be the right spacing or the right flow rate for their particular farm or operation. And so, but yeah, there's a lot of experienced people here at Jain. We've got a great dealer base that stocks and carries our products, and could also answer that question. But I would say anything that you're doing in a backyard, garden, you almost can't mess that up. You could go with a 2 inch spacing. I have a 6 inch emitter spacing in my backyard garden that I grow onions and lettuce and tomatoes. And so really, for a homeowner, just about anything works. Now, when you get onto a large scale farming agriculture, you've got to really get it pinned down, to the right spacing and the right flow, and make sure you've got the right, dimensions, and we'll cover these things.
Right. But that's cool. I can really customize it to my application and my farm.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can get it very detailed. In this presentation, we'll talk about 3 products primarily that Jain manufactures. And here's just a snapshot. I'll just name them. We've got Cascade off to the left. We have Chapin right in the middle. And then we have Turbo Tape on the right-hand side. We know that no 2 systems are really alike. And, they vary from soil type to maybe different varieties, to different climates, to different field sizes. And so we've invested quite a bit of money, millions, into technology and machinery to offer a number of products that we feel, would, complement, just, make a good complement to a number of these crops. The first one I wanted to talk about was Chapin, which we actually make in upstate New York, in Watertown, New York. And if anyone wants to visit, I'm taking reservations for the winter time. So it's a bit of a challenge to get up there in the winter, but phenomenal place. They've been in existence or making product for over 50 years. And it's a continuous style drip tape, which means you've got a path, you've got a number of inlets and a pathway that just runs the complete line of the drip tape, and comes in a number of different spacing and flow rates and mil thicknesses. And it's really been an industry leader in kind of the veggie market, and also in the fruit, the strawberries, and other crops. It's known for its tensile strength, and it has a rolled edge, is what we refer to, but it's just an easy way of saying we add extra material on the edges of the tape to reinforce it, to make it just a little bit more sturdy, so that it stands up and handles the elements, whether it's insects or pressure, or just putting it in the ground and pulling it back out. These are all things that will cause strain on material, and this really has some of the in the industry. We have a number of growers that have used 6 mil product of maybe somebody else's product, and we've tested some of our 5 mil, and they have said, listen, this 5 mil works just as good as a 6 mil, and I see no difference other than a savings. And so it's really it's been a workhorse, and it's been a great product for us over the years. Cascade, which is made in Fresno, California. It has an extruded emitter that's inserted into polyethylene, and it was designed in Israel. It's manufactured here in the U.S., and it's really it's been a leader in a number of crops, both East Coast and West Coast, and right in the middle of the country. In Florida, we utilize it mainly in strawberries and tomatoes. Been just a fantastic product for growers. In the Midwest, we use it in the corn soybean rotation. We've also gained quite a bit of traction in cotton. So it's been just a really good product. Great for SDI, which is subsurface drip irrigation, which means you're going to put it in the ground and you're going to leave it in the ground for a number of years and try and get a good utilization out of it. So very difficult to plug the product, and it's got really good velocity. If you can see my cursor right through here, we've got really good velocity that just keeps everything in suspension and just moves it through the emitter track. So it these teeth have been designed to make sure that we keep water moving at a pretty rapid pace. It's a fine balance between, because you're lowering the pressure, you're slowing water down, but at the same time you can't slow it down too much. You need to keep things in suspension and keep the velocity moving pretty quick. So, and finally, we have turbo tape, which is another continuous style emitter, but we insert a ribbon into the material. It was engineered here in the US. It's manufactured in Fresno. And one of the real cool things about this product, and we'll go into more detail, is we have continuous filtering inlets that run the entire length of the tubing on both sides. And so you've got filtration built right within the tape on both sides of the emitter pathway. So each one of those inlets acts as a filter, and you can plug an inlet and you can be just fine. You can plug multiple inlets and be okay. It's when you plug inside the emitter pathway is when it becomes an issue. But this has been a great product for us in the onion and garlic markets. We've been able to go with a very close emitter spacing, and with what we call an ultra low flow flow rate, which is really what these crops require. And this is just, it's really kind of, fit right within there. It certainly can be used in a number of other crops as well. We've just seen really good market leadership in the onion and garlic market here in the US with that product. When we're talking about trying to select, the right tape, I think it all starts with selecting the right resin. And we work with Dow Chemical. We're a major customer of Dow. I'm sure the volume that we purchase affords us good pricing, but it's probably not the cheapest stuff out on the market, and we're okay with that. It's more important to us that we use good quality resin, something that's not recycled. We're all in favor of recycling our product and putting it maybe into other things. At this point, we just don't want to put it back into our drip tape. We feel like there's growers are investing thousands of dollars per acre in a crop, and the last thing we want to do is put something else in there other than virgin quality resin. So if you look at this pie graph, you can see that most of what goes into drip tape is actually the polyethylene. And then we add some carbon black, which are the UV protection inhibitors. It just keeps it from really breaking down in the sun. And then, there's some other stabilizers in there. Everyone kind of has their own secret, blend or process. And so this is something that, our chemical engineers have studied and have figured out a good mixture that you want it to have a little bit of flex to it, but not too much. And you want it to have, good, sturdy, resistance and not pull too much. And so it's a bit of a fine balance. And we think we found that. And so that's worked really, really well for us. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of crops, a lot of different applications. And we don't really think, there is a one size fits all approach. We feel like we need to offer as many options as possible that will be tailored to really the soil type, the water requirement, the run length, and so on. And so here's just a few crops. We work with hundreds of different crops worldwide, really trying to, articulate a product or come up with a product that's really going to be kind of the best fit for that crop.
So, hey, Kevin, I have a question here. Are many people use drip tape in landscape applications?
Yeah, I think so. You might be able to answer this better than I can. I've seen it more and more go into commercial, turf type applications. Where people will drip irrigate a football field or a soccer field. I think if I were to retrofit my my home system, I would try a drip irrigation. I don't think you would use really drip tape for that. You'd want to use something, with a heavier, a bigger wall, probably a 45 wall. And so we're talking, 20 mil is where we max out at drip tape, and you probably want to be double that on a commercial landscape or even on just a landscape. But yeah, I think it's probably done more often than not.
Yeah, so when you say a 45 wall, you mean the thickness of the wall is 45 mil?
Yeah, right around there. Yep.
And that is that's typically right a midterline or a total CV type application. Is that right?
Correct. Right. More of a tubing, a heavy wall emitter line like total CV that we offer, for our landscape customers.
Yeah, and the lifespan of this strip tape, does it last a while? And I know it's going to be on mill size, but what do you say about that?
Yeah, so on the mill thickness, 4, 5 mil, 6 mil, those are typically, you're going to get probably a one use out of it. And then we'll want to go ahead and have that picked up and recycled. You get into, and I should include 8 mil in there as well. Sometimes 8 mil will get used for a couple of years, but in a lot of cases, most of our growers in Florida use an 8 mil for their strawberries and also for their tomatoes. And that's put in and taken out all within 1 year. You get into some of the 10 mil, the 13 mil, the 15 mil, the 20, those all are gonna last a number of years. You're gonna spend a lot more on that, and the goal is that you really maximize the longevity on that.
Great, thanks, Kevin.
I didn't mean to stall on this slide. It's a little bit of a busy slide, but I just wanted to. What I'm really trying to explain here is all of the different flow rates that we have across the flow spectrum, and this would include, our 4 different products. We really offer within drip tape, but these first 2, these are what we consider ultra low flow emitters, and so these are 0.06 gallons per hour emitter. very, very low flow, hard to make. Not everyone can do this. A bit of probably a combination of an art and science trying to get this perfected. The next 5 flow rates, and I didn't really think about this too long, but I would kind of consider this more of our low flow products. Range from a 0.10 to about a 0.17, again, gallons per hour per emitter. And then we've got our medium flow products and our high flow products. So, in these 4 different categories, we cover kind of, the extreme ranges. And these are just kind of our standard common products that we make every day. You could probably fill in the gaps a little bit with some other custom type items, but these are products that we're making every day that go into several different markets. And so we feel like we have invested in the drippers, the molds, the technology, the equipment to really cover the entire flow spectrum. I wanted to talk about this because it gets a little confusing sometimes, but you have gallons per hour per emitter, and I off to the right, I put some in our thin wall emitter line, which is our cascade, and I think most companies do this. We label things in gallons per hour per emitter, and then we just vary the emitter by spacing. In our drip tape options, we list them in gallons per minute per 100 feet. And I've seen where this really kind of messes people up sometimes if you don't understand it. But so this 0.20 is a gallons per minute per 100 feet of line. It's going to be flowing at 0.20 gallons. And so it gets a little confusing, but I did want to make the distinction. And I wanted to show the calculation on here that if you were to convert from gallons per minute per 100 feet to gallons per hour per emitter, this is kind of how you would do it. You would take whatever flow you have, divide it by the number of emitters that you have within 100 feet, and then times it by 60. So in this case, if you have a 0.40 gallons per minute per 100 feet on an 8-inch spacing, which would be 150 emitters in 100 feet, times that by 60, you come up with a 0.16. And then I did kind of just reverse the math on here, trying to take it from gallons per hour per emitter and switch it into gallons per minute per 100 feet. So I don't mean to confuse anybody. I felt like it was worth spending just a minute or two talking about this. I can give this slide, and I've got a few cheat sheets where we kind of go back and forth. But I have seen where there was a grower that got confused, and they asked for a 0.25, and no one really he didn't specify if he wanted it in gallons per minute per 100 feet or if he wanted it in gallons per hour per emitter. And with Murphy's Law, it got designed in a gallon per hour per emitter, and they didn't have the capacity, and it needed to be completely redesigned. The piping needed to come out. It ended up being a bit of a mess.
So Kevin, why do we care about the 100 feet? Why is that important?
Good question. I don't really know the answer to that, other than our industry has kind of set some standards. It probably goes back to, it's an easy way to calculate. I think ultimately you want to get to gallons per minute per acre, and I think this is just an easier way to kind of get there. And so if you know what your Q100 is, there's a calculation where you can put that in and understand how many gallons per minute per acre you're dealing with, and that'll help you kind of go back and make sure that you've got enough sizing in your pipe to handle that flow. In a lot of cases, you're looking at like 20 gallons a minute per acre, in say a 10-acre zone. And so it's just a matter of, kind of going back through the design process. Other than that, I don't know exactly why.
Yeah, definitely a lot of planning here, right? And your pipe sizing and all to get it there. And yeah, knowing how much you're putting on per acre is really critical.
Right. Yep. So one of the reasons we're all sitting here is really, how to decide which tape is going to be the best option. I just came up with a little checklist of things that I feel are worth going through, and at least on every time you look at this, probably take these things into consideration as you're trying to figure out what's going to be really the best option. The run length is probably one of the first things somebody would like to start with, and that has everything to do with the inside diameter of the drip tape. And we at Jain, we've made the investments in different products, so we kind of run the whole spectrum on this. But our 5/8 inch drip tape, this is really meant to go, maybe as much as 700-800 feet, and some of this will depend on flow and spacing. If you've got a higher flow, it's going to be a little bit less. But the goal is that you want to be at least at 90% emission uniformity, and so again, 5/8 probably you want to keep that 700-800 feet. That 7/8 you probably want to pick up around that 800 feet. You can kind of run that to maybe about 1,300 feet. And again, I'm using some averages. And it really kind of depends on specific flows. If you need a longer length of run, if you're going closer to 1,500 feet, you probably need to either adjust your spacing, or you need to bump this up to a 1-inch drip tape. If you need to go further than that, if you're kind of in that 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet range, you're going to want to consider 1 inch and 1/8. And if you're over 2,000 feet, and we see some of this in California, but we see more of it in Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, Oklahoma. They're trying to go half-mile runs, and they're using a massive size drip tape to get to those half-mile runs. And so Jain has all of these. When you look at our Chapin and Turbo Tape products, really kind of lend itself to this 5/8 and 7/8. Our Cascade products, really, I mean, it's the entire run here. But in Cascade, so we do this in 5/8 and also in 7/8, but we make it in the 1 inch, 1 and 1/8, and 1 and 3/8. I think the next question that you want to ask is really, what's the longevity? Is this going to be just a single use application, or is this going to be an SDI? The photo to the left is a lettuce crop on the coast where we're using a 5 mil Chapin. We're going about 900 feet on this, and it's an 8-inch spacing, medium flow. And the photo on the right is obviously a cotton crop where they're burying that tape below the surface, about 1 foot deep, and they're leaving it in the ground for as long as they possibly can. And they're just farming on top of it. And they've most have kind of thought through how they're going to plan and what they're going to farm, what the rotation is going to be, so that they can get, really 15, 20 years or even longer out of it. So I just wanted to show kind of two different examples. I've got a video here. Hopefully this plays. And this is actually 4 mil drip tape, 7/8, on the coast of California. And this is a lettuce crop that's already been harvested. And this tape is really, it's on the surface to barely just under, maybe about 1 inch deep. And what they're trying to do is they're running these rotating bars, and they're lifting it to the surface and then, laying it back down so that it can be retrieved. But I think we're one of the few companies that offers a 4 mil drip tape in a 7/8. And we've seen a big change on the coast where growers were using 13 and 15 mil drip tape and getting multiple uses out of it. And just with, for a number of reasons, we've seen that, we've seen a complete change to a single use application, but it only makes sense financially if you can do this in a 5 mil or even a 4 mil. And we've kind of put a pencil to it, and as have growers, and they found that this is actually a better way for them to operate. There's a big labor factor that goes into play here too. So, but yeah, this has been a huge market for us on the coast, selling our Chapin 7/8, 5 mil, maybe a little bit of 4 mil. This grower was real happy with the results. So we'll kind of keep moving in that direction. This is,
Kevin, do you have any video or photos of installations of tape?
I don't. Not in this presentation. This is picking the tape up from the field, and then it's getting wound onto a binder, and then this will be sent to a recycler. Yeah, Richard, I don't.
Okay.
I kind of missed that. If somebody specifically is looking for that, I can find something and send that to that individual.
Yeah, we actually have some posted on the website, and yeah, I just wanted to remind people that we do have these on big spools that they put on the tractors, and it's all an automated process, right, Kevin?
It is, yeah. I mean, it takes a few employees, right, to try and make sure, it gets, fed into the right loop. But yeah, this cuts quite a bit of labor out. They used to take this material and they would splice it, they would heat weld it together, and it was a real tedious process. It cost a lot of money. Takes a lot of people to be involved with the labor shortage that we've experienced in our industry. This has really been a good option, and I will say, there is a chance, year after year after year, you can see a little bit of degradation with the tape. Maybe something gets plugged, or as you're splicing, you don't get it just right. This way, I mean, you're starting fresh, and you're really getting 90-95% uniformity out of the drip tape. I think studies have shown, regardless of whose tape it is, the performance goes down year after year, especially in a situation like this. Just real quick, talking about the soil type on your farm, I think it's important to make sure you understand, are you dealing with heavy soils or light soils? And that'll help determine the spacing of your drip tape and also the mill thickness of your drip tape. If you've got really, really tight soils, heavy soils, you could consider using that turbo tape on a 6 or 8 inch spacing with one of those ultra low flow products. It's one of the main reasons onion growers use this, is because some of these onions, they don't want too much water around the bulb, and so if you've got an application rate of your tape that's too much for your soil to take in, you'll have puddling, and that can cause breakdown when those onions go into storage. And so I've been involved in a few studies on that, where we've seen huge improvements by going with those very, very low flow rates on those close, tight emitters. Lighter soils, you can go to an 8 or a 12 inch, and you can up your flow. I will say, depending on the soil type, is you're installing your tape. Remember, some soils are more forgiving than others, and so if you lay it a little bit deeper, it might be more of a challenge to get it back out of the ground. And so you'll want to keep that in mind as you're trying to decide, okay, do I want to go with a 5 mil or a 6 mil, or do I want to consider an 8 mil? And so these are all things that go in the decision process. water quality, you know, that's, and this picture I'm showing here is really nothing. This isn't like an ultra dirty. This is just flushing a drip line. I think, you know, most people have seen something like this. If you've got adequate filtration, we have products that can handle this just fine. And we definitely want to steer somebody to Chapin Deluxe, which has kind of an extra set of inlets. Again, each one of these inlets is a filter. And so it just gives you a little bit more protection. Especially for organic matter, that'll help out quite a bit. Turbo tape, kind of the same concept. We have dual filtering inlets on both sides, very difficult to plug. I will say that if you have a real heavy silt load, probably the best option is to go with that discrete emitter, that small individual emitter in Cascade. It doesn't have very far for the water to travel. It's got really, really good velocity, and it's probably your best line of defense against plugging if you've got a heavy silt load. So I just wanted to kind of give the group, the audience, a few options. You know, if you've got challenging water conditions, Chapin Deluxe, great option. Turbo tape, great option. And the same with Cascade. And if it's a heavy silt load, you know, Cascade is probably the best option in that case. Anyone that's traveled around knows that not everything is flat. I live in Idaho, and rarely do we see anything that any kind of a flat field. Slopes can be a challenge, and we got a great option for that. We have a pressure compensating product that, regardless of the slope or the pressure that changes within that slope, your flow is going to remain the same. And this is our top drip PC product. We make this in a drip tape. Right now, we're offering this in a 20 mil product. And I don't know, I haven't gotten to that slide yet. I do just want to make a note. For every foot, whether it's going up or down, you're changing the pressure by almost a half a pound of pressure. So if you have an 800-foot run with a 5% slope, you probably have 40 feet of elevation drop. This will work out to just under 20 psi difference, right? So that's significant, and you definitely want to make sure that you're using something with that's either pressure compensating or that has a very low emitter exponent. Our Cascade has a low. It's not pressure compensating, but it does have you know, an emitter exponent kind of in that 0.2 to 0.25. So much better than some other products. But again, that's not, you know, fully pressure compensating, but we do have a PC product that will work very well. And I've listed some of the products. Again, we make this in a 20 mil. Common products would be a 16-inch or an 18-inch spacing. And we make this in a low flow, which is a 0.15, and we also make it in a medium flow, which is a 0.26. I was in the Boise area over the weekend and had a chance to go visit a farming operation that's used our Chapin drip tape for probably the last 11 years. Been very, very happy with it. They kind of pushed the envelope with it a little bit, but I just wanted to show the tape depth. This is an onion crop, and you know, they're putting this around 2 inches deep, and I mean, the field looked beautiful. The soil was pretty mellow. There's a little bit of cracking on the soil. It's more due to a heavy rain that came through, but getting the tape depth dialed in is really, really critical. And I think only you are going to know best, you know, where you want that tape in relationship to your crop. But just know you want to keep that, you know, probably more shallow than deep. I think a couple inches for an onion or garlic crop is a really good target level for that. And again, you kind of saw some of the cracking in the soil, and that's, you know, when it's I think there's a fair amount of clay, not too much clay, but there's clay in there that's causing a little bit of crusting and a little bit of cracking. And you know, when water, you know, gets in between those particles, kind of pushes that oxygen out, and then it expands those particles, and that's one of the reasons why you see a little bit of cracking. Let me see if I can go back to that. Kind of see what I'm talking about. Just a few examples of some tape applications. The depth. I think this is a corn crop in Texas or Oklahoma. This tape is about a foot deep, and you can see the riser assembly, where it's coming up from. And they did a really good job trenching this and getting this installed the right way. This will be in the ground for as long as they possibly can leave it in the ground. As long as they take care and maintain the tape, they're going to get a good lifespan out of it. This is Jain Drip Tape that was installed. They were celebrating 25 years. This is in Kansas, and so this is about 11, 12 inches deep, and really happy. Sorry, it's 16 inches deep, but happy with the performance. Lasted 25 years, and so yeah, good. You want to make sure, depending on the crop, that you've got the right tape at the right depth. The application rate is really important as well. As I mentioned, you want to match the infiltration rate of the soil to the application rate of the drip tape or the emitter. In this field, this is an 8-inch spacing. This is right here at the zone break, and so I thought it was a kind of a good illustration. The water on the left, where you can see it's completely subbed out, that ran for about 12 hours, and so it did what I think these are on 40-inch beds, and you've got the line of tape right in the middle, and two paired rows of onions. So did a really good job. You know, they may have ran it even a little bit longer than really what they needed to, but still a pretty good job. The tape on the right has been running for just a couple hours, and you can just see how uniform that is all the way through. But that's an 8-inch spacing turbo tape that we were using on that. So I just wanted to go through a few crops and kind of highlight, you know, different options. You know, here's a field in Oregon, and you get about 800 feet, kind of right there on the line, you know, pushing the envelope a little bit, but we did the math on it, and it was in kind of that high 80s, low 90s as far as emission uniformity. And so either Chapin or turbo tape would be a great option. This field actually is a field of Chapin. You could use a 6-inch emitter spacing, you could use an 8-inch emitter spacing, or even a 12-inch. In this case, we used a 12-inch Chapin product. Either a low flow or an ultra low flow would both work really well for this crop. And I think this is a 5 mil product, but you know, some growers might use 6 mil. You know, if they feel like, you know, the soil, you know, may have a little bit of trash in it, or, you know, it could be a little bit rougher. I've also seen growers that have said, you know what, I'm going to go 4 mil on this, and I'm going to see, you know, what I can do to save a little extra money. But this field is actually a 5 mil product. So just a good illustration of a Chapin product in an onion field. But this could very well be a turbo tape product as well. With Cascade, we probably it would grow onions just fine. We just feel like, you know, we've got different focuses, and we feel like Chapin's probably a better option, and probably a little bit more going to be less expensive as well. These are processing tomatoes. They're transplanting this field right now. This is a 1,200 foot run length, and so we felt felt like 7/8 was the right drip tape to go with on this. The drip tape is actually below each one of these lines, buried about a foot deep, and we're using a 13 mil product. Again, this is going to be in the ground for at least 5 years, and so we have two flow rate options: a 0.13 or a 0.17, either on a 12-inch or a 14-inch. Both work really well, and so just and again, this is Cascade. It's really been kind of our go-to product for processing tomatoes on the West Coast, and been just a great product for this market. And then this is a lettuce crop. The tape is really, this picture doesn't show it, but this tape is buried about an inch below the soil surface. This is at the very end of the run, and sometimes the tape will be exposed. But this is more of a medium to heavy soil type. We're actually going with an 8-inch medium flow product on here. This is a 5 mil drip product, and
Kevin, is 5 mil pretty common mill to use for lettuce?
It is now. It used to be. It used to be all 8 mil, 10 mil, 13 mil, even 15 mil. We've made the switch, and when I say this, I'm talking about lettuce grown in California, primarily on the coast, maybe a little bit down in the desert, and also in the Central Valley of California. But yeah, we use 5 mil quite a bit. It is buried, and they are using it for a single application. And they're doing this really for labor and for cost, are the two reasons. So
it's actually reducing labor.
This is reducing labor. So versus pulling it out, resplicing it, putting it back on reels, inventorying it. This has been something that we've seen over the last 5 years. We've seen growers completely change, and they've gone to this. It doesn't make sense to do it with a 6 mil product, but at 5 mil, it makes sense. At 4 mil, it really makes sense, and we're trying to go in that direction. I messed up on this slide. That mill thickness is 5 mil, not 13 or 15 mil.
Right.
It's just a tape selection guide. I think it's cut off a little bit. You can't see everything, but anybody, it's a one-page brochure that just kind of goes through some of the major crops, mainly vegetable crops, some fruit crops, and helps one decide really, what would be kind of the best choice, maybe a good secondary or a good third option. And so we have that. Anybody that is interested in that, please, you can reach out to me. My information will be on the next slide, and I'll make that available. And I did just want to finish by saying thank you. I realize everyone's time is precious. It's important. We want to reward those that are on this webinar. That if you do want that tape selection guide, go ahead and just hit me up, either my phone number or my email address, and I'll make sure you get that. But above and beyond that, we wanted to extend an appreciation for those attending this webinar by offering a 5% discount on any of the products that I listed, the Chapin, the Turbo Tape, or the Cascade. It's a very generous discount. There's a few caveats in there. We'd want at least a minimum order of 96 coils, and we'd cap it at a truckload. If you're a farmer, we'll get with your irrigation dealer and we'll work out the details, but we would take an extra 5%. We'd make sure that you pay 5% less than what you normally would pay, but you've got to be on this webinar today. We would want to kind of work through the details by the end of this week, and we'd want it to ship between now and sometime within the month of June. So just a way of saying thank you. And hope everyone enjoyed this webinar, and more than happy to take some questions.
Yeah, really nice, generous offer, Kevin. Thank you. And we do have quite a few questions to cover. And speaking of price, right off the bat, you know, people are wondering, are all these products priced the same?
They're not. There's you're going to see, you know, some variations a little bit. Chapin BTF is probably going to be the best value on here. Chapin Deluxe and Turbo Tape are going to be priced very similar. And Cascade, you know, should kind of fall within that range. Because with Cascade, they're individual emitters. If we drop below, say, 12 inches and go to a closer emitter spacing, each one of those emitters cost money. Whereas the Chapin or the Turbo Tape, regardless of the spacing, the price really remains the same. They're all priced competitive in the market. You know, we certainly don't want to, you know, give anything away, but we're not, you know, we're not too proud of it either. We want to make sure that we're offering, you know, a great product at a good affordable price.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Kevin. So are both Cascade and Turbo Tape made in Fresno?
They are. They're both made in Fresno.
Okay. And another one, if somebody wants to find a dealer that sells our product, what's the easiest way to do that?
Really, I mean, if you want to, you know, contact myself, I can point you in the right direction. We work really with you know, most irrigation dealers, you know, across the country. We have 600, you know, good, solid irrigation dealers that represent us here in the U.S. And so I think, you know, you're able to, I think even on our website, you know, I think there's a way to find, you know, some of our irrigation dealers, but you can certainly just reach out to me if you have a specific question on that, and I can certainly point you in the right direction. Got a lot of good qualified dealers that be ready, willing to help you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I've seen that dealer locator too. You type in your address or your zip code and it'll list them out as well. And then another question we had was, which of these products protects the best against plugging? Right, so if I've got a little bit of a dirty water application.
Yeah, if you have a heavy silt load, I would say Cascade is probably your best option. We've seen it's difficult to plug that, and we have really good velocity that runs through there, and been a great option. If you've got more organic matter, you know, I think Chapin Deluxe, Turbo Tape, both really, I mean, just excellent options. I don't want to take anything away from a good filtration system that needs to be a part of any irrigation system. You know, whether it's a sand media or it's a screen filter, those are important. But sometimes, you know, particles will find their way through. And so with that said, I think those products I mentioned will do a good job.
Yeah, and so then, Kevin, you had that great photo of your onions in Idaho, and you had some tape 2 inches below the surface. Remember that photo? Yeah. Do you remember specifically what tape that was?
That was our Chapin drip tape. It's a 5/8 drip tape. It's a 6 mil. It's a 12-inch spacing, and it's a 0.25 gallons per minute per 100 feet. It's a 12-inch low flow Chapin drip tape.
And then, and one last question here today, Kevin. You know, for the fittings for the larger size tape, how do people attach that to supply tubing? How does all that work?
Yep. We as a company actually make the fittings that go to these drip tapes, and so we make a fitting that's an 1 3/8 big, right? That'll the tape will just kind of sleeve right over the barb, and then we have a twist lock that fastens it together. There's a few different options to connect that to a riser assembly that would go into PVC, you know, either with a barb or a grommet. or on a saddle. Yeah, we make all of those, and certainly have an option if that's of interest.
Yeah. So Kevin, thank you so much for all this information today. You know, really, when you think about all the choices, it really can make your head spin. So I love seeing that spreadsheet and which tape fits the application best. I just love that. I hope a lot of people reach out and ask you for that, because I know I find that super helpful. Thank you, Kevin, for your great presentation. Thank you for all of you who attended today. Just a reminder that we will be emailing this presentation, the video, to you later on this afternoon with the offer. And you can go on the Jain website at any time and see any of our videos in the video series. They're all there. If you just go to the main page and type in webinar series, you'll find the page, and you can watch all of them there. So again, Kevin, thank you. Great job today. And thanks to all who attended. And
All right,
we'll see you Friday. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks.